This is 99% Invisible.
Over a decade after Elvis Presley's death, the King of Rock and Roll took over headlines once again, as Americans weighed in on which portrait of Elvis would be forever immortalized on a 29-cent U.S. postage stamp.
If the USPS did put Elvis on a stamp, it would represent a fundamental change in what stamps looked like and who was allowed to be on them. Because Elvis Presley wasn't a war hero or a respected composer. He was a rock star with a rock star lifestyle.
In the early 90s, the post office began recruiting artists to illustrate a series of stamps that would feature famous musicians.
I wanted Elvis's sex appeal to come through because I think that was a big part of why he was so controversial and successful. And then I had the little tousle of hair that was loose that showed that he was active on stage. And he's a little perspiry, but that's like too subtle for stamp worlds.
The Postal Service narrowed their choices down to Stutzman's and one other.
Young soft boy Elvis was a far cry from the second Elvis portrait made by an artist named John Berkey.
Berkey's design shows Elvis in his later years. The press might have dubbed this design Old Elvis, but he was only 42 when he died. And there was something poignant to the image of him in his last years, a flawed hero. It was put to a popular vote. Should the stamp feature an image of young Elvis at the start of his rise, or an older Elvis in his iconic white jumpsuit?
It was anyone's guess which version of the King of Rock and Roll would win out. But one presidential candidate of that year made no mystery about where he was placing his chips.
What do you like, the old Elvis or the, which stamp? You know, I know you're an Elvis fan.
I led a national crusade for the young Elvis.
Really?
Yeah. You know, when you get old, he got fat like me. I think it has to be the young Elvis. That's when he had all his energy and real raw, new, fresh power. It would be a shame to do the old stamp.
Young Elvis won by a landslide, taking 75% of the vote.
We're not elitist anymore, and we're not only doing symphonies, and we're not only doing dead poets, but we're doing people that contributed to the culture of our country.